I'll run with it. I don't care. I grew up in a time where watching Emergency and Adam 12, and those were big influences on my life. And I thought the coolest thing in the world would be to, save lives, take lives, be a cop, be in the military. Unfortunately, kind of some of that stuff actually did happen. After high school, I ended up, it was a choice, go in the military or follow a path and get into the world of EMS. So I went to EMT school. Back then, paramedicine was just starting to come into the real world. We didn't have a lot of paramedics around us. So became an EMT, worked up in Ventura, California. Even the firefighters weren't EMTs, got a ton of experience, hands-on stuff, doing all sorts of fun stuff, crawling into cars, rappelling, all that kind of fun stuff. So it just kind of sparked even more of a fire, and ended up getting hired on with LA City Fire Department as a paramedic. Worked there for about 15 years. Retired out of there with a injury, and got into the world of executive protection and contracting work, and worked all overseas doing all sorts of fun stuff. So virtually every time, I'm a firm believer in if a door opens, walk through it, see what happens. So
Pat, why do you think continuing to train people on medical readiness is important today?
It's a lost skill. We have lost the ability of most people to treat themselves, treat their family members. We've become a society based on call 911. 911 fixes everything. First aid doesn't exist. I'm a first aid instructor with the American Heart Association, and it's a very, very weak program. When I went through high school, we had to take a semester of first aid where we actually learned how to bandage and stop the bleeding. We actually did tourniquets, although back then it was frowned upon. Nowadays, it's a primary go-to tool. Things have changed, and they constantly change in the medical field, but most people now are lacking that skill set. So it's very important for people to learn that so they can take care of themselves and family.
Perfect segue into what are you actually going to be teaching in our upcoming course? What is TECC?
I'm going to be teaching TECC, Tactical Emergency Casualty Care, which is a program that came from TCCC, TCCC, as they like to call it in the military, which is Tactical Combat Casualty Care. A lot of good things come out of combat, and one of the good things that comes out of it is our increase in medical knowledge and skills. And TCCC was designed specifically for the combat environment. So in order to grow and adapt it more towards the civilian world, law enforcement, first responders, they changed some things, and that's where TECC comes in. It's very similar in many ways, but it's adapted for the civilian and our world here in the non-combative environment. I will be teaching TECC along with an elevated version of that, so I cover a lot more basic first aid stuff as well.
Okay, that's very good. How do a basic understanding of tactics play into trauma care?
Tactics. Yeah, tactics are one of those things. Tactics are how you approach something. That's all. How are you going to approach the situation? We start out in any situation where we're going to use TECC. Is one of our first things is scene safety. That's your tactic. What's going on? You don't want to walk in to a bad situation. You don't want to become part of the problem. You want to be part of the solution. And so your tactics, what you do and how you approach the situation is very important. And you need to understand what you can do in different situations to gain access to your patients or the people that need your help and not put yourself in a bad position.
What are the three most basic medical things the average person should know?
The three most basic things. How to bandage, I think, is very important. The fact that a basic assessment of another human being is very important. In other words, Are they breathing? Do you know what to do if they're not? Do you know how to open an airway? These are very similar things. Communication, in other words, with the person is very important. And a lot of people wouldn't look at it as a medical tactic or a medical skill, but it is. And I would say the third is how to keep somebody calm, how to deal with small situations, and not always rely on 911.
How has your interest in pursuit of learning and practicing knife fighting shaped your awareness?
Ooh. Been doing Filipino martial arts for about 25 years, lots of knife fighting. Coming from a medical background, I think it gives me an advantage, and sometimes it creeps people out because a lot of times when you're learning a certain maneuver or movement with a knife, you know, people arbitrarily slash and just doing that. I'm more the, okay, this is where your liver is, this is where you're going to hit a nerve bundle, this is where you might hit an artery. So from a medical background, it gives me an advantage because I tend to aim where I'm going to point my strikes